I'm Fatheree.
This is Dave.
And this is Tex-Trek.
Engage.
So welcome back aboard the starship Texas for the 55th installment of the Tex-Trek podcast, and we will be discussing the latest episode of Star Trek Discovery, Point of Light.
Third episode of second season?
Yes, sir.
Yep.
This episode was written by Andrew Colville and directed by Olatunde Osunsanmi.
I'm 100% sure you pronounced that right.
So I'm just going to start things off with our opening statements. We'll each give a little spoiler-free idea of how we generally feel about this episode, and then we'll get into spoilers and more details. But for me, I said last week that episode New Eden was the most traditional episode of Star Trek Discovery. Mm-hmm. It felt like it could have been in any Star Trek show, and felt more like the original series than anything. This week, with Point of Light, this feels like the most Discovery episode they've done of Season 2. Or specifically, it kind of feels like a Season 1 episode.
Right. You're talking about like it's sort of characters, zeroing in on the characters the way it did.
And just how it's not so much a self-contained story, but more about continuing storylines that have previously been set up, setting up new storylines. Mm-hmm. And I don't mean that in a bad way to say that it felt very like Season 1 Discovery. There's a lot I really liked in Season 1 Discovery. But yeah, this episode, it feels kind of like a middle chapter of moving along these storylines. So it doesn't stand out as a unique identity.
Right, where people are going to be like, oh, that's the episode with the baby head. Although they might.
I said keep it spoiler-free for now. But anyways, it is still a good episode that I really enjoy. It just doesn't have much of that like identity that the previous two episodes of the season have had.
Right.
How do you feel about it?
So I think we're pretty much on the same page here. The word that came to mind as I was watching it was housekeeping.
Yes.
And I don't like that's gonna sound pretty harsh, but like it's just filling in gaps. It did seem to be doing that in a way, but it was very interesting housekeeping because they're interesting characters. And I think I felt myself. I don't know if I was gelling more with the Klingon stuff in this than in the first season because it's more in English and I sense more nuance in the conversations. I think that might be a thing for me at least. But I was more interested in that than I was in a lot of the Klingon stuff in Season 1. Of course, I'm always going to enjoy any housekeeping or anything that has Tilly in it. And let's see, what was the other? What was the other?
And we also have Amanda visit the ship.
Right. Yeah, we've got Michael and Amanda in conversation. A little surprise there.
Yeah, we're learning more about Spock. They're setting the stage for when we do finally meet Spock on the show.
Yeah. I will be curious if the people who kind of felt it was like veering a little bit away from what they liked about Season 1 are more into this. I did like it, but, if I was going to rank them, and it feels a little crass, but if I was going to rank them, I'd say it's my least favorite one of the first season, just in the sense that as we've often discussed, I like the standalone episodes. I like a strong sort of beginning, middle, and ending that tells like a complete story and a morality play of some sort, and this was not that.
Well, the last two episodes were also really good.
Yeah. But I think this was good at what it did. It's just that what it did was more of like a reminder that this is also an arc, that this is also a series that tells a broader story, and that this was a little time to zero in on that.
So I'm just going to go straight into our warp speed summary.
All right, let's do it. Hit it.
So this episode really starts things off when the Discovery encounters Sarek's ship. But guess what? It ain't Sarek on the ship. It's Amanda, mother of Spock, who beams aboard the Discovery. She tells her foster daughter, Burnham, that it is up to the two of them to help Spock. After learning his location, Amanda tried to see Spock, but the psychiatric ward would not allow her to visit her son. So she did the only logical thing and swiped his medical file from them and came to Disco to get assistance from Michael to decrypt it. They go to Captain Pike, but he is reluctant to give them the go-ahead to break the rules and decrypt the data. Instead, he contacts Captain Diego Vela, who appears to be in command of Starbase 5. And Pike lets Vela know that they need all the info on Spock to continue their Priority 1 investigation of the red bursts, and they have reason to believe that Spock knows something. Vela says he can't give any information over because Spock is wanted for murder.
What?
What? He says that Spock has killed 3 of his doctors and escaped.
I kind of wish they'd said how he killed them. Like, did he break their neck? Did he phaser them? What happened?
I'm sure we'll find out.
We'll find out.
And Vela also says that they've got quote-unquote people on it. Pike doesn't like the sound of that. He ends the call. Amanda and Burnham don't think there is any way Spock would do such a thing. But Captain Pike says that the quote-unquote people on Spock's case won't share their doubts, and Spock is in serious trouble. He orders Burnham to decrypt the file. Once the file is decrypted, Amanda sees images of the Red Angel, an image which has now appeared in every episode this season. Amanda explains that Spock described a Red Angel figure years ago as a child. He first spoke to her and Sarek about the Red Angel on the day that Burnham tried to run away. You see, back when Burnham was a human kid on planet Vulcan, there was the day we learned about in Season 1 when her school got bombed by Vulcan logic extremists, and she pretty much died before Sarek revived her with his Katra through the mind-melding soul graft. Now we know that shortly after that happened, little Michael tried to run away. It sounds like she wanted to catch a ride back to Earth, but she didn't make it far, all because she was quickly found by Sarek. But now Amanda says Sarek knew where to find her because Spock told them where to look, and said that he got this information from a Red Angel. Sarek and Amanda always assumed Spock imagined the Red Angel and figured out where she was some other way. But now that Burnham has seen the same image 2 episodes ago, it's really clear the Red Angels are real. And we get some details on the big schism between Spock and Burnham. Burnham says that as kids, she hurt Spock somehow intentionally in order to keep him further away. She knew she was a target for the logic extremists who didn't like a human living on Vulcan, and she didn't want her little brother, who was always tagging along with her, to be put in harm's way. We still don't learn exactly what happened, but it was definitely a big deal because Burnham, whatever it was, she can't even confess what it is to Amanda. And Amanda understands that whatever it was must have been pretty terrible, so she tells Burnham that she will continue the hunt for Spock on her own. And she leaves the ship to continue looking for her son. But enough about the search for Spock, it's time to get #silly for Tilly. As we know, Ensign Tilly is in the command training program this year. She's on the path that can lead to her fulfilling her dream of becoming a Starfleet captain. But the trials of the CTP are complicated for her as she keeps seeing her dead childhood friend from last episode, May. May appears to her as an adult aboard the ship that no one else seems to be aware of. Tilly tries to act normal, but May keeps yelling at her, demanding help, and asking about the captain. While arguing with the apparent ghost haunting her, she has a very awkward exchange on the bridge in front of the captain and makes a total ass out of herself. Everyone else on the bridge seems to think that she's gone totally cuckoo. And back in her and Burnham's quarters, Tilly explains to Burnham that she keeps seeing May, who's being a total asshole to her, yelling at her, grooming her for something, and just not leaving her alone. They conclude that whatever Tilly is seeing, it's tied to the dark matter asteroid in the mycelial network. So Tilly goes to Stamets for help. Stamets is able to figure out that Tilly was infected with a fungus life form, And that is what that little green spore that landed on her shoulder last season was.
Mystery solved.
And May apparently really doesn't like Stamets. He is the captain she was asking about, the one who flies the ship from the spore chamber. Stamets is able to remove the multidimensional fungal parasite and imprison it. So while all of this was going on the USS Discovery, back on Kronos, we finally see what the Klingons are up to this season. L'Orelle is still at her post as High Chancellor and has Ash Tyler, or Voke, or Ash Voke, or Vokler, whatever the fan base wants to call him. We're just going to stick with Tyler. But Tyler has taken up duties as L'Orelle's torchbearer, the same position Voke served for T'Kuvma. Chancellor L'Orelle has big plans to combine all the houses of the Klingon people into a more united empire, with a fleet of D7 battlecruisers. But all is not well in the Empire. Kolshaw, the father of Kol, that was the massive dickhead Klingon from Season 1, really doesn't take kindly to L'Orelle's approach of unifying all the houses into one big happy family. It's clear he has plans to undermine L'Orelle. As for Tyler, he gets even less respect on Kronos than L'Orelle because of his totally human appearance. But L'Orelle really wants to keep him around. She still has romantic feelings for Voke, the Klingon that Tyler used to be. He says he can't return those feelings, though. Those memories of fun Klingon sexy time don't feel right to him. Tyler reaches out to Michael via holographic chat and lets her know that while L'Orelle still has authority over the Empire, certain Klingons are questioning that authority, and if she loses her position, the current peace between the Klingons and the Federation will also be lost. Burnham says she'll pass this information up the chain of command. Things also get a little personal as the two former lovers talk, and Tyler confesses he is doubting his usefulness to L'Orelle, and he feels more like a vulnerability than anything else. But Michael, clearly wishing Ash was by her side and not L'Orelle's, tells him to trust L'Orelle's instinct and continue to serve her if she still feels like he is helping. Things get a lot more complicated after this when L'Orelle's uncle, Ujili, that's the Klingon in this episode with the Mr. T mohawk, he reveals to Tyler a secret L'Orelle has been keeping. Voke and L'Orelle had a baby! Ujili shows the little albino baby boy to Tyler. L'Orelle confesses that she became pregnant with Voke's child during the mission to transform Voke into Tyler and infiltrate the Discovery. In order to keep the mission on track and reactivate Voke, L'Orelle chose to complete the baby's gestation ex utero, and she has never actually seen the child because he would be such a vulnerability for her if discovered by her political enemies. Also, she didn't want Tyler to learn of the child. She says that she knows one day he will leave Kronos to live as a human, and when he does, she wants him to have the freedom to do so without feeling any obligation to her or their child. Tyler, learning that he is a daddy, says he wants to raise the kid and is completely devoted to L'Orelle. But Kolshaw quickly ruins their family plans. It turns out he has been spying on them all along, and the dishonorable Patak he is kidnaps their baby. Kolshaw meets with Tyler and L'Orelle and says he will spare the child if she gives him command of the Empire. But L'Orelle is a Klingon, and her and Tyler bust out the blades to fight Kolshaw and his men. Big action ensues. The two of them defeat a lot of Kolshaw's guys, but they're stopped by Kolshaw's paralysis weapon that kind of looks like Darth Maul's double-bladed lightsaber. He forces a paralyzed L'Orelle to sign some document making him Chancellor, and it seems he has completely succeeded in his coup to usurp L'Orelle. But right before he can execute the two of them, a shadowy figure appears out of nowhere, and she's got all kinds of crazy high-tech weapons. She's got a drone taking out guys with phaser blasts. She has a weird force field bubble that stops Kolshaw in his tracks. She makes short work of them, and once Kolshaw and his men lay dead, she reveals herself. It's Emperor Georgiou of the Terran Empire, now operating as a Section 31 agent. After rescuing L'Orelle and Tyler, she tells L'Rell that the only way she will truly have power and respect is to get rid of Tyler and the baby. So L'Rell tells the rest of the Empire in a big speech that Tyler betrayed her to the Federation and killed her infant before trying to assassinate her. She then says that Coleshaw gave his life defending her from the villain Tyler. She says that Coleshaw's sacrifice is a lesson to all Klingons for the houses to stick together. And for some reason, because she will never bear another child, she rejects the title High Chancellor and assumes the title Mother. All of the Empire are now her children. But it turns out Tyler and the baby are both alive and with Georgiou on board a secret Section 31 ship. The little albino Klingon baby is dropped off on Boreth to be raised in a Klingon monastery, where he will be safe. Tyler is recruited into Georgiou's Section 31 crew, and the covert Black Ops Section 31 ship flies away at warp speed to do Q only knows what dirty deeds. Roll credits.
All right, I got a question for you, Fatheree.
What's up?
Is that the longest description we've had so far? Or at least of Season 3? Or Season 2?
I think so, and that's mainly because there's 3 different plots going on.
It speaks to what we were talking about earlier about this being kind of a housekeeping episode. A lot of stuff happens. It may not be all big things, although arguably the changing the whole fate of the Klingon Empire is the biggest of them. What else happened? Tilly got a parasites pulled out of her, and I don't know. We found out some little background stuff about Spock and Burnham and Amanda.
Yeah, but I think that was some really big stuff,
right?
And with the I think that might be the biggest stuff in this episode, because the things going on between Amanda and Burnham are what's moving the big season story with the Red Angels along more than anything else.
Right. But yeah, a lot of stuff happens. It's just not kind of the of a sort of focused dramatic arc sort of thing.
And all 3 of these stories, because I don't really like trying to figure out which one's the A story, the B story, the C story, because they could
this one
all
doesn't
be...
seem. Yeah, this one does not have an obvious choosing from those.
Well, they could all be an entire episode.
Sure.
You could do an entire episode on Kronos with Tyler and L'Rell, or you could do an entire episode of Amanda and Burnham investigating Spock and the Red Angels.
Although I would hope if they did any of those episodes, there would be some sort of B plot intersecting with it. But yes, any one of them could carry an episode, or I guess itself be a big B plot.
But
what's the deal with everybody breaking into Spock's shit? It's kind of funny. No, I just have to say, it's kind of funny how there's all these contrivances. The breaking into his cabin is just kind of accepted. His mom tries to get his medical records, which obviously in any sort of ethical medical institution would be not fair, especially if it were going against the wishes of the patient. So she steals it and she takes it to the Enterprise to hack it so they can see it. Obviously, this all works dramatically. It needs to happen to move the story forward. It's just kind of funny to me.
Well, Amanda knows about the Red Burst stuff.
Right, so right. Everything supersedes her son's privacy.
Yeah, because whatever's going on is bigger than any type of medical condition. There's bigger things going on at play, and Spock is potentially in more danger than...
She did... One thing I thought was interesting about her character is that she evokes logic on herself. Obviously she is the human, emotional side of the equation between her and Sarek, but she's not by any means devoid of a logical approach herself. And when they were talking about, did Spock kill these guys? Did they not? She was pretty quick to say it could happen. Was it that based on the fact that their own records showed that there was this dearth of logic going on with him at the present, or just that it was a possibility?
Well, that's where they get in kind of the weird stuff of talking about Spock as possibly a psychopath.
Right, right, that's right.
His severe empathy deficit.
Yeah.
And that ties back into what was set up 2 episodes ago, where Sarek tells Burnham that, when they adopted her, they were hoping that Spock could learn empathy from her. And she says, I can assure you Spock understands empathy, something along those lines. Although when we discussed that previously, you made a comment that, well, if you watch the original series, that's not always the case.
Spock?
Yeah, so what do you think about now if Spock has this weird empathy deficit?
It seems clear to me that that he did, but, episodes, the one that always comes to mind because the crew, lacking a Kirk to kind of rein them in, all freak out, is Galileo 7, where they're like, Spock, you don't even care, you're not even going to bury this crewman, they any number of occasions, McCoy is always questioning his empathy, but I think it's clear to the viewer that he has empathy. I've never thought of him as not having empathy. He, the needs of the many outweigh the needs of the few is arguably the most empathetic statement you could make. So yeah, I don't think... It's odd to me that they would choose that as a plot point in some ways to lean into. But it is what I think on a superficial viewing of him or any Vulcan, how they would appear.
For sure. But it was weird that to his Vulcan father, he would come off like that as a child. Mm-hmm. I'm really curious to see what the deal is between Burnham and Spock. What exactly happened? What did she do to drive this rift between them? Right. And I'm really curious to see Spock and what the hell is going on with him. This whole
do you think it's going to be not till the end of the season that we find out, or do you think
I think it'll be in the next few episodes that we'll see Spock. I don't know if we'll have all the mysteries of their childhood resolved. Right. But I don't really care about this empathy deficit thing. That to me that's one of the least interesting things going on here.
They're going to have to, I think, sell the audience on that. Because everybody knows and loves Spock and finds him warm beneath his cold Vulcan exterior. Yeah. And indeed, that dichotomy is what we love about Spock.
He's obviously not going to be a murderer. Right. He either didn't do it or he was possessed or something like that.
But I wonder if they have some new insight into how the show wants to lens Vulcan philosophy, and that's why they're playing it up. Or they want to discuss the different, the closeness it has to a psychopath and his ability to, well, not ability to, but how a pure sociopath lacks empathy. What's the, does the Vulcan philosophy come, dangerously close to a psychopath?
You're kind of selling me on it. I can see how that could be kind of neat, but
yeah, but yes, they're gonna have to sell me and everybody on it, because it's a weird thing that I don't think anybody ever. As far back as Spock's original appearances, I don't think anybody really questioned him. By the time you saw him doing stuff, and calling Kirk Jim and stuff like that, we understood that he had empathy.
My favorite moment, one of my favorite moments from the original series, when he sees that Kirk survived amok time. Yeah. And there's all the emotion comes out of Spock.
One of the greatest scenes.
You get that big smile, that reaction when he sees his best friend is still alive.
A rare case where Spock showing empathy is not a kind of a glitch of continuity, but a feature of a great script. I did want to mention the fact that they brought up in his youth that this is where that schism occurred with Burnham, and whatever she did to do to hurt him happened. It sounds like it's probably not the relationship thing, which admittedly was an outlier.
Kurtzman has said that is outright not the case.
Okay. I didn't think they would want to approach anything, like I said, that seemed to be in the proximity of incest, even if it wouldn't technically be. But I'm not surprised to learn that they did not go that path.
Yeah, last week on their live stream Facebook show
they talked about it.
The Ready Room with Naomi Kyle. You can check that out on the Star Trek Discovery Facebook page on Fridays. But that's what replaced After Trek. Mm-hmm. But Alex Kurtzman said something along the lines of, we're aware of those rumors, that fan speculation. That's absolutely not the case. That was never on the table. This is a brother-sister relationship. That's how we've always treated it.
Well, I thought it was a brother-sister relationship, too. But let the fanfics roll, baby.
Yeah, so the YouTuber Kit Walski had presented that theory. In his own words, Michael and Spock were hanging and banging. But yeah, unfortunately, that is not the case.
Yeah, well, we didn't quite go to full Game of Thrones.
I mean, they were hanging. They hung out, I guess. Yeah, as brother and sisters often do. But
it's true.
Apparently, they hung out a lot because little Spock was always shadowing her, being like an annoying little brother. It sounds like.
Yeah, it's interesting. The weird age differences between humans and Vulcans mean that there was a time when she was like big sis, but because his lifespan is so long, eventually he's going to overshadow her, and she will feel like the little kid, I think, necessarily, because... Well, actually, no, that's not true. She will grow old, but he will be like, a third of the way through his life path.
But Spock...
Messing with my head.
Spock seems to age more like a human than other Vulcans, because he's half human.
Right, that makes sense.
And also because Leonard Nimoy got old.
Right, they had that. You work with what you got.
But,
and then suddenly when they got to Next Generation, well, yeah, they threw some old age makeup on him, but then it seemed like it slowed down a little bit once the full wrinkles appeared.
But yeah, I think we can assume that Michael Burnham won't live to see Picard and the Enterprise D in the Next Generation like Spock did.
Probably not.
I mean, maybe she does. I mean, McCoy was still alive then. But,
who knows?
But
she could end up, when all is said and done, in the mycelial network. We don't know.
Yeah, but you're right. Like, her younger brother is likely gonna live to be much older than her.
Right.
But
what else? What do we have as kind of some of our big plot points we want to touch on for this episode?
Well, we got to see Tilly do the command training program a little bit here. So that's kind of how the episode opens, was with her running.
First of all, that was a nice callback to her getting some training from Burnham in season 1.
Yeah, it does seem weird that Tilly can stop, have a 30-second conversation with a ghost, and then somehow still not only beat her best time, but also outrun all the other, command training program candidates.
You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to no-prize this for them, Marvel style, and say that this was not some little sprint through the ship. This was 8 laps around the ship or something.
Yeah, they called it a marathon.
Right, it's long as hell.
Oh, she'd already lapped everybody.
Yeah, something like that happened, and so 30 seconds in a something that's probably meant to run 20 or 30 minutes total, or 45 minutes, or who knows how long. 30 seconds was not actually as big as it seemed to us.
I was just thinking the fungus made her faster, but...
you think she'll have fungus powers at the end of this? Is that where we're going?
I don't know. I always think it's cool, just me being the big comic book superhero guy that I am.
You wanted to get augmented?
I think it's cool when we see quote-unquote superpowers in Star Trek.
Okay.
They never describe it that way, but like Troy with her...
she's got
empathy powers.
Right. Spock has super strength.
Yeah. They don't call it powers. They would probably say abilities. But Khan is really strong.
Yeah.
I like seeing that stuff.
It's nice to see an acknowledgement that the difference between humans and aliens is more than just a wrinkle or two on the forehead. That they do have some kind of fun, honestly, genre-friendly biological differences. Being stronger is cool. Being able to mind read is cool. Being able to read empathy is cool. So, I agree with you. Although I don't think I ever consciously thought of it as superpowers.
One of the things that I thought was kind of funny that happened to me when this episode aired Thursday, I knew that they were going to have a new version of the disco t-shirt.
Yeah.
Because in my email, I'd gotten an email from the Star Trek store on StarTrek.com.
Did they jump the gun?
Saying on tonight's episode, you'll see this new t-shirt for the command training program, but you can order it now.
That's pretty cool, actually.
Yeah, so they're peddling that disco merch.
That's a cool item, I gotta say. Send us free ones.
But we also get to see something the fans had really been wanting to see, and that is the Klingon D7. We'll get into the other Klingon stuff in just a second, but let's talk about this awesome Matt Jeffries designed ship that we see.
You know what's funny is it feels goofy to kind of that's such a big thing, just how a ship looks, but it is. I don't know how many episodes those D7s appeared on in the original show. What's your guesstimate? You have a much better sense. No, gotta be more than that. Because they also showed Romulan versions of it, of the D7. There's gotta be more than 3. I bet it's 10 or 12, right?
Or in the remaster? No! The Klingons don't even appear in that many episodes.
No. There's a lot of them.
In the remastered or in the original version?
I don't know.
I'm gonna say in the original version we see D7 3 times.
God, I feel like it's more than that. But
we'll look it up later.
But here's why I might be misremembering it, is that because, of course, fandom latched onto it. There were models made of it. There's been toys made of it. And, comics and endless other projects. The movies captured it,
Yeah.
It ended, I guess, as of Star Trek the Motion Picture. Although they used it in the opening of...
Well, that's not a D7.
Right. It's very modeled on it. It's very modeled on it. I know it's a Katinga.
But and that's kind of what this Disco D7 kind of looks more like the Katinga than the traditional D7.
Sure, it makes sense that just technology-wise they would go with the superstructure is pretty similar. Anyway, it's the scene in which they talk about it. Am I correct? When they showed the previews for this season, was there not something verbatim? Did they not show at least that line about this will be like the flagship of like a new fleet or something? No,
they never showed that, but they showed the hologram of the D7.
I thought they actually said something. Maybe that was just our speculation then. But it's a small thing, but yes, I was excited to hear it. Excited to hear that it was like going to become the flagship, that there was clearly their major initiative, that it represented a unified Klingon front, and would... In a lot of ways, it answers a lot of our problems with the Klingons and all their disparate houses, which they wanted to be a bigger thing in Season 1. It turned out to not be as exciting as I think they hoped it would be. And so, in veering continuity-wise back to what we know of the Klingons, they've made the D7 have story importance. That it wasn't just the ship that happened to be around when Kirk was there. It's like the ship that unified an empire.
It was more than just fan service.
Right. They thought it through.
I don't think fan service is a necessarily bad thing. Like, I think that's cool when you...
I mean, you can call it thoughtful fan service if you wanted.
But it was tied into the story.
Yeah.
And they did a lot to... address some of the criticisms people had with the Klingons in Season 1. Mm-hmm. They did a lot to address that. We got Klingons with hair now. They look a little bit more Klingon-ish.
Right. They said they're growing it out after the war.
I could have done without that line.
Why?
Well, the makeup people on Discovery, months ago, they were saying that, oh yeah, so the reason why the Klingons didn't have hair in Season 1 is because Klingons shave their heads when they go into war.
Okay.
Even though they don't do that later, but
I wasn't sure if it might have been because the Great Unifier had shaved his head and they all lined up with him to Kovma, which would sort of make sense to me.
But it kind of doesn't make sense because before you even have the war with the Federation, in the first episode of the Vulcan Hello, all the Klingons are bald. And when we see Takuma talk about all the different Klingons on the holograms in the battle at the binary stars, they're all bald, every one of them.
But sounds like some classic Trek continuity to me.
Well, maybe all of the houses are at war with each other, and that's why they were all bald. And now they have no war.
A civil war is still a war.
Yeah.
Sure, let's go with it. Klingons war a lot. You'd think they'd be bald more often. But clearly, this is the point at which they decided the unity of the Empire is more important than more baldness.
Well, Mary Chieffo also addressed on Twitter... when people said, why weren't the Klingons bald during the Dominion War? And so she's like, oh, because after Star Trek 6, when the neutral zone comes down and everything that Chang feared about the Klingons losing their sense of identity, it happens and they're not as traditional anymore. And so she's trying to lean into the continuity to justify it. And I'm just happy the Klingons look better.
This is like an Old Testament, New Testament kind of thing where the New Testament writes over the old rules.
Well, I could have done without that line that, the war is over. I don't need that in the canon. I don't need it explained that the Klingons look better.
Well, I would have thought you would. You're such a continuity guy. If they had just started growing their hair with no explanation, you would have been satisfied?
Star Trek changes the look of aliens all the time, without explanation.
It's a big difference from one season to the next.
I mean, Worf himself, his makeup changes in the Next Generation.
Yeah.
That's never explained.
Yeah, I feel like that feels more of a special effects evolution where this one...
That's how I look at it.
I don't know. Somehow, I'm glad they threw the line in personally. I get what you're saying.
And I don't really like that explanation that they shave their heads during war. I kind of just don't like that. I don't like that being in the continuity. I'll go as far as to say that. But it is.
Is it not possible it's they did up until literally this time? Because clearly things are changing. Because it seems like L'Rell is like a reformer of sorts. There's no way that somebody who comes in and declares herself the mother of the Klingon Empire and rejects the title of Chancellor, that this is some small thing. That's a massive upheaval of Klingon tradition. So it's not hard for me to buy that with her arrival came differences that would last forevermore.
But what do you think about some of the Klingon designs? Because a lot of them, I think they do look better than season 1, but I want them to do even better than this.
Do you just want them to like go to TNG's model or DS9
I want
etc.?
I want them to go to the original series model.
Oh, you want to see the ridgeless Klingons?
Yeah. And I'll go ahead.
It's a deep cut that I feel that frankly has been somewhat
It's not a deep cut.
It is, I think, because there's been so many more episodes set post that look than there ever were pre that look. And by your own standards, Klingons were apparently only in 3 episodes of the original series.
No, the ship was only in 3 episodes.
Oh.
Klingons were in 6.
Okay.
Or 7 if you count the Savage Curtain.
It's barely anything.
But
who was the Klingon guy in that one?
That was Kalis.
Kalis, right.
The unforgettable. How did you forget him?
This is why I can't get into Klingon Academy.
Do you like Uncle Ujili with the Mr. T Mohawk?
Yeah, I liked them all. I actually thought they all looked good.
Okay.
I don't have any complaints. Yeah, I think asking for, here's the thing. I don't think they will really ever mess too much with the original series look because I think it's just special effects wise a little bit passé. Meta continuity here.
Let me sell you on it.
All right. Is this gonna involve a discussion of Enterprise?
Yes.
Okay, go ahead.
So we have the season 4 episode of Enterprise, where we're actually 2 episodes,
which I have not seen. So,
but they set up that a Klingon colony is infected with this human augment virus that creates this mutation, and that's where you get the ridgeless Klingons. Now we haven't seen those.
An intentionally developed virus so they can infiltrate?
No.
Like, so what's the goal? What was the goal of the genetically engineered virus?
It was something that accidentally happened.
Oh, okay.
But because they were trying to create super Klingons, like how Khan, they have like some of the eugenics war augments, and they were trying to use that DNA. Data's great grandfather was there. It's a whole thing. You just gotta watch it.
Okay.
But anyways, like some of these Klingons are infected, and they start looking more human. And we don't see those in Discovery. So I think the way to dovetail all of the continuity together into one cool little story would be to establish kind of how we see Tyler is treated as an outcast here because of his human look.
Right.
They don't like these ridgeless Klingons. They're all on like this one colony world. And what happens, either have someone else tries to betray L'Rell, and so she turns to them to be the Klingon Defense Force and take over the military as her enforcers, or someone goes...
Like the idea being that they're the one group she can trust, is that what you're saying?
Yeah, for some reason she strikes an alliance with them, or someone else strikes an alliance with them, and they take over the Empire from L'Rell. But however it works out, these guys are basically...
This is why they're at the forefront in TOS?
Yes.
I'm willing to work with that theory. I think the only reason they would reject it is on that meta level that they don't want to go back and revisit old stories and old special effects. They don't want to spend a whole episode or even part of an episode explaining what was frankly an old special effect. But I like your premise. I would tune in for this story. I love the old look. I've actually liked every look of the Klingons except for Discovery's season 1 look. So I'd be down for it. I'd be into it.
And Alex Kurtzman keeps saying we're going to line up with the original series canon.
Speaking of Kurtzman, I didn't like the movie version either.
So he didn't the Star Trek Into Darkness Klingons.
Yeah, was he off of it at that point?
No, he co-wrote that movie.
Yeah, okay. Did he write the Klingons look shitty?
No.
In the script?
There was so many better concepts for that movie, and the one that J.J. Abrams chose for like the look of the Klingons was like one of the worst.
What happens when you let a Star Wars guy do a Star Trek movie?
But as far as like if and I'm not making this a requirement of Discovery to get everything back in line with the original series canon. I mean, of course, me being a canonista, I want that to happen. But this is the promises they're making, so I'm just saying ways that they can do it.
Right, and they've certainly interwoven often enough mirror universe stuff and other things like that. That it'd be super cool if they did.
I mean, assuming you're probably already going to do a story where L'Rell has to put some military people in charge of things that she can trust, or someone else is probably going to take over the Empire from her. Something like that's going to happen anyways.
And D7's got to get used at some point. It can't just be a hologram.
Yeah, no, I hope we see one this year at some point.
Yeah. Am I right that there is no reason to believe we could not see one of the famous named Klingons of TOS commanding a D7.
So that's another thing I was going to bring up.
Because I would be so fucking about that.
So the Klingon Cole from season 1,
Mm-hmm.
played by actor Kenneth Mitchell.
Mm-hmm.
You know, he died last season.
Mm-hmm.
In this episode, we see his father,
Right?
Cole Shaw, which sounds too much like coleslaw to me, but we're in Texas, we eat a lot of barbecue. Coleslaw is very common.
It's an alien
here.
name. Respect it, bitch.
But I'm not going to respect it because this guy is a fucking asshole and I hate him.
A lot of Klingon assholes, to be fair.
True. Yeah, this guy's like Duras level asshole. But he's also played by Kenneth Mitchell, the same actor.
Hmm?
So I almost want it to be like one of those like in-joke things, or like you bring in a new member of the family like every season and kill them or something. But they're the House of Core. This has gone back all the way since season 1. They've said that like they're part of the House of Core.
Hmm?
So I'm thinking if you're gonna have some of these TOS-looking Regulus Klingons, have Kenneth Mitchell play Core and be like, oh yeah, now that my nephew and my brother are dead, I'll take over House Core.
Quick reminder for continuity, dumb Dave. Which one was Core?
He was from Errand of Mercy.
Errand of Mercy with the Organians.
Yes, the first appearance of Klingons.
Right, dope-ass Klingon, classic-type Klingon.
And then he shows back up in Deep Space Nine a few times.
So, yeah, right. Your notion would be that, like, after a series of family tragedies, he ends up becoming a pretty badass named Klingon.
Yeah, and you could just have it like, yeah, like I should have been in control of the house all along, but I was one of the weird augment Klingons, so they shunned me and kept me on, like, the colony planet, and...
What do you think the odds are of that happening?
I don't know, but I think it's a possibility.
I like it. Again, I will vote for this idea if it is brought to a vote.
Alex, if you're watching this, you can use any of my ideas for free. I won't try to sue you or anything. Like, you can have them.
Legally binding.
Not only do we see the Klingons again in this episode, but we see Emperor Georgiou again.
Yep.
So what do you think about her and her Section 31 stuff she had going on?
As we know, I hate Section 31, conceptually, ish, sort of, willing to give it a shot. But her moment, there were two things I thought about it. A, she's super cool in it. There's just no doubting. She shows up, she flips back the hood after her drones kick the shit out of everybody. It's a cool scene. It was a weirdly last-minute save, and that's one of those things that felt like more Star Wars than Star Trek to me. I know it's happened. There's been like, you know, something's going to blow up and they stop it just in time. Yeah. But the last-minute save right when somebody's about to be executed...
That's such a common trope, though.
I know, it's kind of an adventure trope, but I couldn't think of too many... Can you think of, like, just a Star Trek occasion of it? Just off... You know, what I was thinking about, I was trying to, like, think of something, I thought of Star Trek 2, and I was like, oh, well, what about when he puts in the prefix code? But there you actually see him kind of working for it.
When Worf... I mean, not Worf. When Spock fixes the warp engine right before the Genesis device goes off.
Well, again, I feel like...
The last-minute save was a climax of that movie.
If they had just showed it happen without knowing anything about how it happened, then yes, it would be. But we saw Spock doing the labor of it, so that it did not just suddenly happen and you're just like, whoa, that was good, lucky timing.
Oh, yeah.
He was working his ass off on it for a while before, on screen and everything.
Yeah, I get what you're saying.
So, yeah, minor thing, I just thought that was a little bit Star Warsy. But...
Didn't bother me.
She was cool. I liked seeing her back. I like that she's got so much attitude that she's like kind of almost like back-talking the guy who's clearly the captain of the Section 31 ship, which looks like a dope-ass ship. It's got the long nacelles of the disco.
Of every Discovery
ship.
Except for the Enterprise, which looks like a proper Starfleet ship.
Shenzhou and Discovery, yeah. There was... I don't know if there's a reason behind that, but anyway,
Brian Fuller wanted all the things to have like flat nacelles. That was one of his weird directives that he gave John Eves.
They look neat still. It gives the show a certain visual identity for the era, and we can assume it's a aesthetic of the era.
And I think it looks appropriate for what we see in the original series and in the movies of the TOS crew. It looks like it's in line with that type of stuff.
It also, their ship had it visually suggested the bird of prey, and because they seem to have, if not a cloak, some kind of,
like the paint.
Stealth device?
Like the color of the ship changes. I thought it was cloaking at first, but when I look at it, it's like, well, no, it's never invisible.
Do you think they're maybe like changing up registry numbers and looks and stuff like that? It's more like an exterior just hologram?
Yeah, possibly.
So what was your take? Were you happy to see Georgiou back, or were you like, Georgiou?
No, I was happy. I'm really nervous about them doing a Section 31 show, because that seems to be such a contradiction to...
the Star Trek ethos?
Right.
Even though they've said in... Who was it who said, we will not betray Star Trek?
That was
wasn't Kurtzman.
Bowie Kim.
Yeah.
Who's going to be... Her and Erica LaPolte are going to be the showrunners on it. But... The idea of doing the Section 31 ship with like its own little crew and stuff. The character you mentioned, Leland, he's from the deleted scene from season 1. He was the person who recruited Georgiou on Kronos into Section 31.
Give her badge.
Yeah. So like I think there is potential to tell cool stories there. One of the things that I had mentioned to you is that, you know, one way to make that work, it would be to give a character on there, and it can't be Georgiou because she ate people in the mirror universe.
Yes.
Like,
why you always got to bring up old shit?
But if you had a character on there who is somewhat sympathetic, who did have a sense of morality, who maybe had a lot of conflict internally about what was going on, that the audience can connect to. And how they use Ash Tyler here.
Yeah.
With him joining the crew, I can totally see him being that individual.
Absolutely. I think they are setting that up, I think. Our hopes about that, I think, will come to fruition through him. And I liked that character throughout season 1, so I'm happy to see him around in that capacity.
Yeah, I like Shazad Latif as an actor, so I would totally be down if he was a regular on this Section 31 spinoff show. And, you know, I'm willing to give it a shot. I'm not a person who thinks Star Trek has to be a Starfleet crew on a ship on exploratory missions.
Right.
Like, I feel like it can do a whole lot of different things.
I sort of felt that way, but when they showed the crew gelling in, like, episodes 1 and 2 of this, I was like... So I feel that way. Obviously, DS9 is, like, the best, maybe, example of it. Obviously, it's awesome. But yes, continue your point. You feel like they can break away from that.
Yeah, and they broke away with it, you know, before with Voyager or Deep Space Nine. Really with Discovery, with season 1, how it's like this weird science ship in the middle of a war. So yeah, you can definitely do different things. Section 31 is just one that makes me a little nervous because that could skew so far away from what I like out of Star Trek. But
I think we're going to see in the first episode something like they'll assassinate some like Gorn that would have risen and like unified the empire of the Gorns or whatever they call their empire thing, and like they kept it from a Gorn uprising from happening or something like that. We're gonna see this real dark side of it. But then I think something's gonna happen. Like Q is gonna show up and just fuck with them.
Well, not Q.
Like how amazing would that be if a Black Ops operation had to deal with him? I want to see it.
If they like,
how do they try and outsmart a guy who just like is just like the worst party crasher of them all?
What if they have like some old Iconian technology that was designed to like capture a Q, and so like they're trying to like use that, or like they're like, this guy's too big of a wild card, we have to assassinate him, and there's like man versus god type story, which is very Star Trek.
It would be interesting, like, you know, the way this is a weird thing to focus on, but like, what if they convinced another Q to assassinate them or something like that? Like, you know, through some philosophical debate or something like that. They won them over to Georgiou's explanation of how morality works. It's dark, I grant, but it's just a random example of the kind of story I think could be interesting to tell. I just don't want it to be like, I don't want a series of stories where, like, ends justify the means, you know, by any means necessary is our philosophy. I think it has to be shown to not work, and then to have the backlash and create power vacuums and all this stuff that really happens when you do that. So, but I think there are plenty of story potentials in it beyond just a series of assassinations.
You mentioned the Gorn,
yeah,
but I think the best use of the Gorn would be in the lower decks of the animated show, because then you could
a Gorn crewman.
You could do that. I hadn't thought of it, but I mean, like, that way you wouldn't have to worry about, like...
I guess they're not a member of the Federation.
No, yeah, they're their own entity, but...
Is it the Gorn hegemony?
Yeah. But you wouldn't have to deal with the practicality of, like, creating a Gorn in live action, because it would all be animated.
Right. They could update the look, and they could make him look cool and have a throat sack inflating and deflating.
Well, they could do something like, I think if that's going to be the comedy show, there is something kind of visually funny of like a lizard man, having a conversation with people, or just like being there in the room with people. He could be a provisional
member of the Federation under their watch.
I think there's
I did not expect this episode to discuss a possible Gorn crew member, but I'm glad it went there.
We're talking about like all the spin-offs and stuff, but to focus back on this episode,
right.
Speaking of Section 31,
yep.
Speaking of ways to try to fix the canon, like they claim they want to do, we noticed that Captain Pike talks on a screen.
Oh,
right. Like FaceTime or Skype instead of the holographic thing.
And get some static for it.
Well, yeah, they call that out. So here's something I'm thinking, is that Georgiou knew that Tyler had contacted Burnham.
Mm-hmm.
That's why they had that mission there, because they want to stabilize the Klingon Empire.
Right.
They don't.
Her sending the message up this chain of command got through to Section 31, is what we're presuming?
That's what you might think. But what if Section 31 monitors holographic communications?
Mm-hmm.
So the idea I'm thinking is that Captain Pike might suspect that there's someone out there monitoring these holographic calls.
Right.
And that's why he talks on the screen, because like that's more secure. Because Pike seems to know about Section 31 in some capacity. When Captain Vela says there's quote-unquote people going after Spock, I think that's where we're going to see the Section 31 ship next. They're going to be hunting Spock.
He pretty quickly moved on the idea that Spock is in danger and we need to protect him because like a CIA hit squad is after him.
So if he does
I thought that they didn't operate under the full auspices of the Federation.
They don't. But people in Starfleet might, like some captains, some high-ranking
sanction
people,
them.
Well, yeah, like, I mean, like, they do it, like, there's admirals that are in Section 31, but they're like their own, like, little secret society.
Right. It's like, it's that Star Chamber thing we talked about.
But, yes, a guy like Pike might be aware of it, or, like, he's heard rumors, and he that might be, like, something that they reveal. It might be, like, a surprise later in the season, like, Pike is like, oh, yeah, I was actually, like, on to you. What if his radiation accident that puts him in a wheelchair when he tries to rescue cadets? What if Section 31 does that to try to kill him or try to, like, shut him up? What if that's why his wheelchair can only, like, blink for yes or no? It's because Section 31 is trying to keep Pike quiet because he knows too much.
Like, they sabotaged his tech, which should have, like, a full range. Probably in, like, 10 years from now, in our time, people will have a full range of options if they can't communicate.
And that's why they allow Spock to hijack the Enterprise and take Pike to Talos 4, because then he'll just stay there and live his little fantasy adventures and won't ever be able to spill any of the Section 31 secrets to anyone.
I hate to say it, but I think that they may not be as in depth on the continuity as you are, but those are all interesting ideas. The view screen thing reminds me of, in the first episode of the Battlestar Galactica revamped miniseries in like 2003, how the Galactica was able to survive the initial onslaught of the Cylons because they did not have networked computers. They had like old corded phones and stuff like that on there. And so it was a rare case where ye old technology prevented them from being intercepted and caught.
But it might be that Pike just prefers talking to someone on a flat screen. I'm just saying, if they are trying to fix the continuity, they might want to back away from the holograms. And if it turns out that, like, oh yeah, holograms aren't very secure, which I always said would be a good way to get rid of that.
Yeah.
Is like, this would be a cool thing to do, is like, Pike has figured this out. He only uses the flat screen communications.
I hope they're listening out there. Again, I think
that's
the holograms
free, Alex.
were
you can use that for free.
Were more than likely, again, just straight up use of, let's use some technology that we hadn't before. But I like the idea of trying to iron out some of these things, and I think that works too. This is yet another of your crazy theories I will support.
So, just one last thing to talk about, and then we'll move on to Easter eggs, unless you have anything you feel you need to say. But let's talk about L'Rell a little bit. This is the first time we see her in power after she rises to the top of the Klingon Empire.
Right. And she's well, like I said, I touched on it before. She's a reformer of the highest order. And I'm trying to think. She talks about unifying the houses, and
which is what Takuvma always wanted to do.
Right. Why did it fall apart for him, or is it just that war, he died before his vision could be...
His idea was that the war would bring all of them together.
Right.
And I guess in a way it did.
Right.
Gave them all a common enemy.
But they did mention there's been discussions of, like, infighting, right? That's, like, weren't they saying something like they would have won the war but for infighting or something like that?
Yeah, well, what the Klingons were doing is they're basically, like, the houses were competing with each other to see who could destroy the most of the Federation. Right. And they weren't really working together. Right.
I think she is looking for a more unified and less series of championships among them. So what she is describing is, it sounds like it would pave the way for... what we see in TNG, ultimately, a fairly unified, if still fractious, and Game of Thrones.
In the original series, when we really see them.
Yeah. I'm just thinking that is clearly the humanoid Klingons are, like, going to be, continuity-wise, they're a subsect of them, but they did come to power at some point. Whether they want to bother with talking about that or not on the show, I don't know, But yeah, I liked her. I thought the actress was doing a good job. I thought them speaking in English, as I said before, they did that trick for the technique that they used famously in Hunt for Red October. They did the thing where they flipped it from being all in Klingonese to English, and the subtitle. Did the subtitles briefly go to Klingon?
She's speaking Klingon, but the subtitles are in English. Then it changes to where she's speaking Klingon. Speaking English, but the subtitles are in Klingon.
Right. And we're not meant to think that she's speaking English, right? Although she does later to...
No, it was a Hunt for Red October thing.
Right. It was just this is for you, the viewer, because we're not going to make you listen to Klingon the whole time. I'm happy they did that. Again, it's a good call.
They're addressing the criticisms of Season 1.
Yeah. What is that? 3 criticisms addressed in one episode? No,
at least.
Lack of D7s or, like, known Klingon ships.
The ugly Klingon ships. Even though they call one a D7 in Season 1, which makes no sense now.
Yeah, well...
I mean, I can no prize it. I'm not going to get into that now, but...
So we got, Klingon ships fix, Klingon lack of mains, mains
They don't have as bad of elongated goblin heads. I mean, some of them still do.
Right. And then now this one,
they're speaking in English.
Right.
It was weird because when the episode starts off, they make all these weird excuses for why they're speaking English. They're like, "Oh, Tyler, you're really a human. We should talk to you in the Federation language." And
it is a little weird that they would bother to blur it like that. I think they just liked the idea. They did still need to play up his human heritage because that would become such a big thing in the episode. But
they wanted the transition into the
do you think
English speaking.
Do you think, like me, that the actors can act a little bit more in English?
I initially loved the idea when they said all the Klingon scenes would be in Klingon language going into Season 1. Well, that was really cool, and it never really bothered me.
Right.
But I think of what my favorite Klingon moments in Season 1 were. My favorite Takuvma moment is when he's speaking English to Starfleet at the Battle of the Binary Stars. My favorite stuff with Cole was when he's speaking English through the Universal Translator to Michael Burnham when they have their big knife fight.
Yeah.
My favorite Laurel stuff, I guess, is some of the stuff where she's speaking English. So it definitely works better, and I agree. I think that was a good idea to try the Klingon stuff, but I think this works better, and I'm glad that they decided to go with a more traditional way of how Star Trek handles aliens, is have them. We just assume that our TV has a universal translator.
Sure.
They're actually speaking Klingon to each other.
Yeah, comics do it all the time with a little footnote below that they're speaking whatever the language is.
Yeah, you put like those sideway V things on the
little brackets or whatever, yeah. And they're like, translated from Japanese or whatever. Here's the thing. I love watching subtitled movies, and I feel like I can really watch the acting happen. But I think something about either the nature of the fact that Klingon is a fictional language and didn't evolve naturally, and so there's not true natural speakers of it, or just the fact that they made it to sound really cool and warrior-y, and it's honestly just harder to get extended performances using it.
Well, they also designed it to sound as alien as possible.
Right.
Like all the grammatical rules and syntax rules that we have on languages on Earth.
Yeah.
They were using everything. What's the most uncommon way to do this? Uncommon way to do that. So they made it the most strangest sounding language intentionally.
Right. And I think all those things kind of added up to it's hard for actors to perform at length in Klingonese. So, yeah, I'm for it. And in the English. Random stuff. Tilly got a blob pulled out of her.
Yeah.
You said it looked like Slimer.
From Ghostbusters.
Yeah, I think you're right.
Just like the way that Stamets pulled it out, is kind of like when they have the proton packs, when they have like the beam locked onto a ghost in Ghostbusters.
Yep. There's, you noticed there seemed to be maybe a split vote on whether it was purple blood or red blood or something in between
I
during
think
the
we
fight.
see both. So I think this is Discovery saying...
Do you think it's just the dark, like, lighting?
No, it's some of the most well-lit shots are clearly red blood.
Yeah.
But, other ones, they're not. I think it's really just Discovery saying, yeah, some Klingons have this color blood, some have this color blood. Like... Star Trek has gotten that wrong before. It's gone back and forth before, so...
I guess that makes a potentially fourth major Klingon thing that they addressed in this episode, although not one that they themselves ever screwed up on. It's just more of a bringing it all together. Anything else before we hit the Easter eggs?
Why is the episode called Point of Light? When it's so clearly what the episode should have been called. Not specifically, but... It should be called something along the lines of Mother, or Dear Mother, or A Mother's Love.
Right.
This entire episode is about mothers. We have Michael being reunited with her foster mother.
Yeah.
The story about Amanda's the mother looking for her son Spock.
Right.
We have, it turns out L'Rell is a mother. It turns out she becomes mother of the entire Klingon Empire. Yeah. We have Georgiou comes on and kind of like rescues everyone, like kind of like a mother. She's kind of a maternal figure.
They could have made it fancy and done it like in Latin. Was it like mater? They could have called it something like that. Or they could have just called it mother.
Or use like a Shakespeare quote about mothers or something.
It's out there.
Or something biblical or something from mythology.
Instead, what do they say? Point of light. That is, that's a dodgy title. I'm going to say it's their first major fuck up.
You agree with me though. Like this is an episode about like motherly shit.
I don't think I quite looked at that as the unifying factor as I was watching it, but yes, seems right. That is definitely the most unifying factor of a series of disparate stories.
And on that note, I thought it was funny when Georgiou is talking about kids and she says, they're so ungrateful and inconvenient. She's still really bitter about her, Michael Burnham in the Mirror Universe, betraying her.
Oh, right. Yeah.
Which was very ungrateful and inconvenient.
Yeah. The Shakespearean quote for the moment, which they might have even used in that episode, is how sharper than a serpent's tooth it is to have an ungrateful child.
Yeah, well, that's from the animated series.
Right.
I guess we're going to go ahead and go into the Easter eggs. The big one, if we're going to count it as an Easter egg, I guess was just seeing the D7 and calling it a D7. That's such like a fan servicey moment, and I mean that in a good way.
Right. We saw I saw a list elsewhere that listed stuff like things like that as an Easter egg, when in fact it's simply a bit of recognized visual iconography from the series. It's not like, oh, did you notice on that screen in the background? No, they wanted you to notice this. It's not quite an Easter egg, but
you don't have to hunt for it.
But it is absolutely something that is, at the very least, it's a sort of fan service and acknowledgement of the greatest Klingon ship design of them all. And in my opinion, one of the great ship designs of them.
Yeah, that's our favorite non-Starfleet ship in Star Trek. We also have a mention of Kahless and Lakaris, who that is part of Klingon mythology. They're like the Romeo and Juliet of Klingon folklore.
Yep.
We have Michael mentions the town of Shakar, where we know Spock grew up on Vulcan. That was established in the animated series, but they've also mentioned Shakar in multiple live-action versions of Star Trek before this. We have the planet Boreth, where they drop off the albino baby. Mm-hmm. That is the home of the Klingon monastery that Worf visits, and Next Generation Season 6 episode Rightful Heir. It also appears in the T'Kuvma prequel comic, Star Trek Discovery: The Light of Kahless, that we talked about recently.
Legit Easter egg.
And that's it. If there's anything I missed, let me know. But I don't want to hear anything about Tyler having the House of Martok symbol as a badge. Because if you look at that, if you freeze frame it and compare that to what we see in Deep Space Nine, it's clearly not the same symbol.
Right. They're reaching.
Yeah.
Do we know what the symbol is that he's wearing?
No, it's just a new Klingon thing. As far as I know, it's never appeared anywhere. Let me know if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure I'm not. And we're going to go into the mailbag now and just mention some of the comments that we've received recently. If you ever want to ask us a question or leave a comment, be sure to do that on Facebook, Twitter, or YouTube, or on our website, Tex-Trek.com. The first one I have, this is from Adam B. Owen via Facebook. Tonight's episode... I should say he's talking about last week's episode, New Eden.
Okay.
Tonight's episode was great. Seeing the away team with Owasakin reminded me one thing I'd love to see the show do is make the cast the crew. They have a handful of supporting characters they should really push to the forefront, develop, and make them regulars. I also like them making bottle episodes connected to the larger Red Angel storyline. It's almost as if the Red Angels are a force guiding the series back to anthology from storytelling.
It's interesting. So here's somebody who I presume is like... I haven't specifically enjoyed those sort of standalone episodes, but he's for him the Red Angels are guiding them back to the classic Trek approach.
And that's what I said when we got like that first trailer last summer, when it says these 7 red lights have appeared and we're going to go investigate them.
Right.
You know, the way that I framed it was, I think it's going to be like a video game where you have a map and you have like these 7 different locations on your map that you have to go to, and each one is going to be like its own little adventure.
Yep. That does seem to be what they did. Now, I don't know that like this episode doesn't speak to that. I wonder if he liked it. Why don't you definitely respond back and let us know if this episode felt retrograde to you or like off the path that you were liking. But there's that's an interesting interpretation that the Angels on a meta level are kind of taking it old school. We will know it a lot more at the end of the season. We'll be able to comment more on that. But,
I think it's pretty clear that's what they're doing. Anson Mount has said that that's basically how
that's what the show is doing, not necessarily what the Angels are doing, although it might metaphorically.
Oh yeah, I don't think the Angels are like, hey, we need to get this crew on the ship to go do more like self-contained missions.
Right.
But I didn't get into my theory about the Red Angels.
Do you want to spit it out now?
I'll go ahead and spit it out now. But so one thing I'm thinking, and it might be how like Culber comes back, is I think like these Red Angels, they're sending the Discovery all these different places where it has like a rescue mission or can save someone. You know, they rescued Tig Notaro or Jet Reno.
Yep. They rescued Church Planet.
They rescued Church Planet or the town of New Eden. Mm-hmm. And I think that the Red Angels might be trying to make themselves look as like these holy entities that are all about divine intervention, and they're actually going to be bad guys, but they're trying to like position themselves in a favorable light. And one of the things that they do is like, oh, really? Like, you still doubt our benevolent love? Look at this. We can bring this guy back to life. And Hugh Culber like comes back.
That's a very specific thing. You think his resurrection will be an example of their power?
Yeah.
Huh.
But I kind of don't want them to come back to life permanently. Like, I want.
What if what they're doing is auditioning to join the Q Continuum or something like that? They're an elevated race, and they're doing this to, I don't know. It's random thought.
That's not how the Q Continuum works.
Yeah,
I don't think they take auditions.
That's true. Maybe that's what these guys are going to learn when the Red Angels can't make it happen. I don't think that's what they're doing.
But back to the mailbag. On YouTube, we have a comment from It a Small World 1, who she's been following us for a long time now. So, always nice to see you. Leave a comment. She says, love your discussion. I greatly enjoyed this episode. Again, this is talking about last week's episode, New Eden. I was so happy that they include Joanne Owasakin in the away team. I love the dynamic of Pike and Michael. He's a great mentor and a foil to her rational, logical approach. So yeah, they do have like a pretty cool chemistry.
I hadn't thought about him in the context of a mentor figure, but because he kind of comes comes on so both like sort of warmly and yet commanding. I think that's a fair appraisal of him. I feel like do you think he will become one of those Star Trek surrogate father type?
Yeah, I mean the
figures?
captain kind of always does that.
Yeah,
or a surrogate mother in Janeway's case.
Yeah, it's interesting because Burnham, arguably her adopted father, who they've had some difficulties, but he's present in her life. I wonder if there will be any sort of push-pull between Sarek and Pike before the season is out. Sarek is obviously not exerting an influence right now.
In this episode, Pike was worried, like, oh no, Sarek's going to be mad at me when the
he's
diplomatic
scary,
ship
okay?
shows up.
Sarek is a scary
he's
man.
a high-ranking diplomat, so it's definitely a guy that's like, oh shit, if I piss this guy off, it's going to make my life a living hell. So
yeah. When he throws scorn at you, it's like a military dad where you're like, oh man. But yeah, I will. That's another one. I think that's a good comment, and I think that'll be an interesting one to watch and see where that particular pairing goes during the season.
But I think that's going to do it for this week's discussion. Of course, we'll be back next Sunday to talk about Star Trek Discovery Season 2, Episode 4, and Obel for Charon, or Charon, however, it's the name of the ship in the Terran Empire, the Palace ship. But it was also like the ferryman's boat.
The boatman from the underworld in Greek mythology.
Yeah.
I've heard Charon, Charon. I'm not 100% sure. I'm going to say Charon.
Yeah, however they say the ship in the Terran Empire is probably how we should say it in regards to Star Trek. But
what was the episode title? Assuming it's Charon?
An obel for Charon.
A what?
An obel? That's the coin.
Oh, okay. Oh, how do you spell it?
Obal, I believe.
Never heard that name.
It's either obel or obel.
That's a good title, though. It's a clear reference. It's got some.
It's better than Point of Light.
It has the resonance of myth because it literally is tied into myth.
And we'll be talking about that next Sunday. Be sure to point out any continuity discrepancies you might be seeing in Star Trek Discovery, because I'm going to talk about those at the end of the season and see if I can no-prize all of them.
I want to hear what people think on the new Klingon.
Yeah, let us know about like the new Klingons. If there's any Easter eggs I missed, or if you have like any thoughts or questions, by all means, leave a comment anywhere you see fit. And until next time,
live long and prosper, y'all.
Thank all of you so much for checking out this installment of Tex-Trek. I hope you enjoyed it. Please be sure to like our YouTube videos and subscribe to our channel. Audio-only version of episodes are available at our website, www.tex-trek.com. Please check out our site, especially if you just want an audio-only podcast. We have that available for you. Y'all can also keep up with us online. You can follow us on Twitter at Tex-Trek, or you can check us out on Facebook at www.facebook.com/tex-trek. Please, by all means, let us know what you think by dropping a comment anywhere you see fit. We definitely want to hear your feedback. Let us know what you liked and what you would like to see more of, what you would like to see differently going forward. If you want to email me directly, go ahead. I can be reached at fathereeactual@tex-trek.com. Thank all y'all again. Take care.